make sure that she's not recording anything with your camera on there. So don't worry. She changed her view on Zoom. But we'll get started on the online mentoring orientation. All right, so before we get started, I want to quickly go over a few Zoom norms on here. First is audio. Please do mute yourself for most of the time. So there are no background noise, no feedback. Definitely, there are designated question slides, so feel free to unmute yourself during those times and to ask any questions. We do encourage you to have your video on, but definitely no pressure. We do want to model actual mentoring session because we ask you to use your camera when you are interacting with your students. Please utilize the chat here. My colleague Eva is here, labeled as a tech support. She will manage the chat, answer any questions, thoughts you came up during the session, and she'll let us know that if any questions that we need to address as a group. If you are experiencing any technical difficulties, we do ask you just log back on as soon as you can, because it is 30 minutes. We'll go over everything pretty quickly. All right, I'm going over our agenda today. The way we just did our welcome. And our objective today is to get you ready to go over the different things that's going to be online for you this year. We will go over the plan for reopening schools. And we're going to do an overview of online mentoring session, what it look like, go over a few important things about online safety, and we'll give you a quick orientation on some of the technology things, going through a few features. Although I'm sure now 8 months, 6 months into quarantine, I'm sure we're all very expert on Zoom and Google Meet now. We will go over a few best practices and expectations. Then we will have time for questions at the end. Definitely the goal here today is you understand how online mentoring works. And we'll highlight some of the skills that you're going to need. And we're going to give you a chance to go over a few technology things so you can support students virtually. All right, so first let's talk about Boston Public School reopening. School did start on September 21st, so not too long ago. For most of you probably have heard that it was a delayed starting time. BPS generally starts right after Labor Day, and they delayed to end of September. So that does mean there is a delayed starting time for all of your matches. You are looking at probably November. You can definitely expect for this entire year, you will be virtual. This mentoring will be virtual regardless what happens with the school reopening plan. Just be ready, your students might be zooming in from the classroom. If they are in the group, they are in the category that they need that special needs support, they are going into school right now. And again, please be patient with us, be flexible. Teachers are learning about this online class together with we are learning how to do online mentoring. So be patient. We are looking at your match start in late fall. I do want to quickly go over the reopening plan. There were some students who went back on October 1st, but everything's subject to change here. And of course, I'm sure a lot of you have already heard there was a delay just announced yesterday about the next phase of reopening already. So things are absolutely subject to change. However, it looks like Wednesday is absolutely the remote day and students are home, but depending on which category, which group your students have been placed in. So they are doing this hybrid model. They might be spending some days at home, some days in the classroom. So just be ready. There might be the days they are zooming in from their classroom. Do want to let you know you are entering teacher's classroom. For all your matches here, we are doing our best to just making it just like how it was in person, but just transition that to online. So you are joining classroom, you are joining the teacher's virtual classroom. So just like teacher provides you all the resources you need when it was in person, teacher is sending you the link to their classroom, so you have access to join them. There is no standard platform across the district, but you can expect this either Google Meet or Zoom. And you log on to the virtual classroom during your scheduled match time. It definitely asks you to be mindful, like if teacher is going through part of instruction, then you work with the students. For the other part of this time, unmute yourself when teachers are teaching. When we match you, connect you with the teacher, please still introduce yourself. Your communication with the teacher this year is more important than ever, because I know I personally even do that. When I have my match, I like to show up to the classroom maybe 5 to 10 minutes early. I'll chat with the teacher so I know what we're working on today, and then we'll just quickly debrief before I walk out. Now, depending on the schedule, we might not be able to do that. So start talking about the communication system with the teacher early on and set up that communication system. How are you sharing lesson plans? How are you sharing materials? So you know what you're working on each week, as well as what kind of frequency you're going to talk to each other about the students' updates, their progress, things like that. And definitely set expectations. Setting that boundary is important, especially in this remote learning environment, because students are just home all the time. It's hard, especially for young students. It's harder for them to set their boundaries, understand this is home, this is school. So set the expectation from early on with your students. When you are communicating with each other, you are communicating with your students only during your match time and things like that. And also, like, how are you structuring each session? Students are on screen for 6 to 7 hours a day, because right now they are required to be online, be on the screen during normal school hours. So for a lot of students, that means 9 to 4. So give them break. Use that. Give them brain breaks. Give them that time just doing jumping jacks, anything, like, be creative. Give them, incorporate that break time into your session. All right, so a few online safety tip things. Absolutely no recording during your session. You cannot take pictures. You cannot record anything. No take screenshots, because that will have the photo of the students. Do not share any of your personal information, contact information. Do not connect on social media with your students. You are only communicating directly with the school staff, with the teacher, or with Boston Partner staff. You do not communicate directly with students. And I know I just went through a lot of guidelines and rules. I want to pause and to see if anyone have any questions.
As of now, it looks like we do not have any questions in the chat. But if anyone has any questions, if you could please type that in the chat, I'd be happy to relay that on to Sue.
Yeah, or you can unmute and ask too. If not, we can definitely move on. All right.
All right, we have a couple of questions. For Power Lunch, how are we doing virtual reading?
Excellent question. I will say we only have 4 Power Lunch schools. We are working with Power Lunch school individually to figure out what schedule, what logistic works best. You are at my orientations. I'm going to assume you're at Quincy. So I'm just going to tell you, at Josiah Quincy Elementary School, looks like Power Lunch will be happening during their small group intervention time. So, and teacher will, so you means you're joining their classroom. So teacher will provide you the link, and then the teacher will put you into the breakout room, and then you'll read one-on-one to the students like you normally do. We will have a list of resources for online library, online free books, things like that, so you can read with students together virtually. And definitely, we'll have a lot of games and fun things to do too. It's been a hard time for students, and a lot of times they feel lonely, they just need a friend. So definitely for Power Lunch, especially, like, talk to students. If they don't want to read, they want to have a conversation, just listen and talk to them, be a friend. but we will have a list of resources and online books for you for Power Lunch.
Okay, it looks like we have 2 more questions. In previous years, we have focused on both academics and social functioning. Is this still the case?
Absolutely. Right now, we're still looking at teacher making this nomination. You are joining students' classroom, so there's still academic part. Of course, it varies from students to students. So really just get to know your students, figure out what's best for them. I definitely have heard that some students, they are just really lonely at home. They really wanted someone to talk to. So also ask your teacher those questions to know that before you even start this match. If the teacher thinks this is more students need social support, needed a friend, then know that's your goal. That's what your goal is. You are trying to just be that social support. If teacher give you a list of the things that really is around academics, this is what students had learning loss during pandemic, and this is what we need to catch up on, then focus on those academics. Really just do what's best for your students and really ask you to be flexible. Talk with your teacher, agree on the goal, agree on what you're trying to accomplish this year, and just meet students where they are.
Our last question is, will we be allowed to share our screens?
Great question. Yes, you'll be doing a lot of that because your match is happening online. So if your teacher is giving you a worksheet to work on virtually, then that absolutely means you'll be sharing your screen, working on that worksheet, look at that together. So definitely one small thing that I do want to remind everyone is because you'll be doing a lot of screen share, close your extra windows and close extra tabs that you have open on your computer, because that is definitely a distraction for students. When you are doing screen sharing, they are looking at what are you doing.
It looks like that is it for now.
All right. Thank you, Eva. Cool. Then we will move on. We will have other chances for you to ask questions as well. Now I want to go over a few technology things. But again, I hope this is a normal part of our life now. I'm just going to do a quick review. I think I already said this, but there is no standard platform. A lot of teachers using Zoom because there is a breakout room function, so you can be with your students one-on-one, but you're also under that controlled environment in the classroom. But be ready, if it is Google Meet, then it is Google Meet. So here is our mentor, Bailey, and this is on Google Meet. So we want to point out those few functions if you're not too familiar with Google Meet. I'll start from the top right. So first, click on that is the chat function where the arrow pointed. So if you click on that, will allow you to send messages to your student, to the small group here. Allow you just use that here on Zoom. So use that chat function, really utilize that, especially when your students are a little bit shy or they haven't really opened up. They are really, what we learned from the summer having high school interns is they're really shy about unmuting themselves and talk. So they are much willing to use the chat and the typing messages. So really use that if you see your students more quiet and they don't talk that much. Coming to the bottom, present now, that's the screen share. So click on that, then you can choose what you are sharing your screen. I would definitely give you the tip that once you click on present now, it's gonna ask you if you are presenting the entire window or a tab or specific things. So definitely choose that. Plan that accordingly. If you are only trying to show a one specific tab that's open on your browser, then only do that. On the display window, that display video, that button is for turning camera on and off. So we definitely encourage you to model good behavior and have your camera on for most of the part. I will caution you, your students might be shy about turning on their camera. So be okay, be flexible, and go with the flow if your students don't want to turn on their camera. Talk to your teacher early on, knowing what type of students you are working with, if they are shy about turning on their camera, and also ask teacher what kind of strategies they use in their classroom when most of the students are just black boxes. So now you have that expectation before you even go in. I will say be creative. If your students are shy about turning on camera, then maybe agree on something like, hey, when we are trying to chit chat, getting to know each other, first 5 minutes, we'll always have our camera on. But maybe after that, if you don't want to turn on your camera, and that's okay. You will want to be mindful, like what student's family situation is, they might not want to turn on their camera. Moving on, then we have the microphone there. That's for audio. Let's mute and unmute. So I know a lot of you are using that right now on Zoom. So for Google Meet, that's right there in the middle. So for prime listening environment, if you have a lot of background noise here, say you have a dog, you have kids running around who might be barking or making noises, make sure when you're not talking, just mute yourself. All right, now let's talk about the things on Zoom. And here is our mentor, Bailey, again. So very similar to Google Meet. You have the similar microphone and a camera on there for mute, unmute, turning on and turning off camera. I will see if your teacher do use Zoom and your students are shy about turning on camera, that is because they don't want to show their home, then be creative. Use a virtual background or things like that. So neither one of you is showing your home. Similar to Google Meet, then there's the chat function, there's a screen share. And then you can chat with your students, and you can also screen share so you and your student are reading the same article, working on the same math problem, things like that. On Zoom, you can also use the Whiteboard feature that you and your students can write on there together. So this menu will pop up once you click on share screen. And you can see the whiteboard is one of the options there. So when you choose whiteboard, you're just gonna see a white screen and you can use your mouse to sketch on there. You can also type messages on there. So if you and your students wants to use that virtually, that's pretty much means you have a Blackboard. So use that. And if you want, definitely there's also low tech function. You can just use a notebook and pull it up to the camera for students to see if Whiteboard doesn't work. I will say when pandemic happened, BPS district gave every student a Chromebook if they don't have computers at home. So Chromebook does have some technology limitations with Zoom. So Whiteboard may or may not work with Chromebook. So just be mindful of that. If Whiteboard doesn't work, then don't stress about that. All right. That's most of the things that I want to go over with you about technology. Any questions here on Zoom or Google Meet?
It looks like so far there are no questions.
Awesome. I'll give it one quick second. If you have questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask any questions too. All right. Cool. Now I just want to go over a quick few expectations about being online. Just like in person, please be on time, be consistent, log in early if you can, be ready for each session. We do want to know, for safety, security reason, please be ready. Each session will be monitored by a teacher or by a staff member. So you just like in person, you always have access to that teacher or to a school staff when you go in school, you should always have access to someone, even when this is on Zoom or on Google Meet. That means the teacher is providing you the link to the classroom or any other school staff. You might be put in a breakout room, but then that is okay. But that does mean you should always have access to a staff member. And just like we tell you, you should never be alone, left alone with student or be in charge of a class in person. That same thing with online. You should still never be left in charge of a class or be alone with your student with no one else is in that Zoom link. You should always communicate through any school staff or the teacher about any schedule change or anything else. You are never directly communicating with any student. Setting that boundary from early on, please. This is going to be happening online, so do your best to find a clean and a quiet area to do each session. We know everyone's home nowadays, so free of distraction is a little bit impossible, but do your best, making sure it's a quiet area. Be comfortable with silence. I know as adults, we like to fill in air, don't want that silence, but be okay with that, especially when you're working with students. Give them the time to process, to digest information, and just be okay with that silence. We ask you to set expectations with students from early on. Setting boundaries is really important now with students. I know I said this earlier because they are home every day. It's hard for them to tell the difference. Hey, now I'm at school, now I'm at home. So it's important for you to set that kind of boundaries. I come in on Wednesdays at 10, then we're only talking on Wednesdays at 10. We're not talking outside of that session time, and we don't email each other. Be patient and be flexible. We can't stress this enough this year. We're all learning this together. I'm learning how to do online mentoring. Teachers are figuring out how to do online class. So please be patient with us. Please be patient with your teacher. We definitely ask you to have your camera on and display your name there so you can get to know your students, learn each other's name, and of course, just like in person, learn how to pronounce their name. Communication with your teacher is more important than ever. So set that system early on. How do you communicate about schedule change? How do you communicate about progress? How often do you communicate about student progress? I will give you the heads up that in terms of grades, teacher will not be able to give you a lot of answers about how they are measuring students or grades. There's no guidelines on how they are giving student grades this year at all. Be prepared, you're going in probably for a lot of social emotional support. They might just be lonely, feel isolated at home. So be ready going and just talk and be a friend. And if you do realize that is the case and you feel that student needs more social support, communicate that with the teacher, check in with the teacher to see if that's right, if that's the same sense the teacher got, and then you can design how you support the student from there. All right, and I just went through a lot of expectations here as well. Do we have any questions?
We have one question. I have never used a breakout room before. Will we be taught how this works, or is this something the teacher will train us with?
Good question. So I think that should be easy enough for you to figure out. Teacher, when you are being put into a breakout room, you will get a message here on Zoom, and it pretty much is an invitation. Then you click on yes on that, then you enter the breakout room. And let teacher know you have never used that before you start your match. Then teacher can give you a quick 1 minute orientation on that. And also Eva and I will stay on after that. If you want to see how it works, we can do that today. Do we have any other questions here?
It looks like we don't have any other questions so far, but if people want to unmute themselves and ask questions, that would be fine as well.
I'll give a quick second before I move on. Okay. All right. So last thing I do want to point out, if you have not used Zoom that much or Google Meet, the platform your teacher is using is different from the one you used to. Here are the resources here. We will send the slides after the orientation today. So feel free to check those out. Both Zoom and Google Meet have pretty good resources there. And we also have our own resource page for social emotional support and for academic support. So don't utilize those resources, and we are always here. So don't forget, you contact your partnership manager if you need anything at all. All right, that is all I have for you today.